Canada, beautiful, independent, and proud. The world's second-largest country, known for its vast wilderness, multiculturalism, and a deep commitment to sovereignty. But what happens when that sovereignty is called into question by its closest neighbor? In January 2025, the newly re-elected Donald Trump, now serving his second term as the 47th President of the United States, made waves with comments that have sent shockwaves through Canadian politics and beyond. Trump's bold suggestion that Canada should become the 51st state of the US, coupled with the looming threat of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, has raised a lot of questions. So, what's at stake for Canada? And how should Canada respond to this growing political storm? And perhaps most importantly, the question everyone in Canada is asking: can Canada really become part of the USA? Today, we'll break down Trump's grand vision, explore Canada's response, and dive into the real challenges Canada faces when it comes to sovereignty, geopolitics, and trade in this ever-shifting global landscape. Let's dive in and explore what all of this means for Canada's future. Friends, before we dive into this exciting video, we just want to remind you to subscribe to our channel, UWork, if you haven't already. We've noticed that many of our viewers enjoy the content, but haven't subscribed yet. Your support helps us reach more people. So please consider hitting that subscribe button, leaving a comment, liking, and sharing the video. We truly appreciate it. Thank you for being part of our community. Let's start the video. Recently, Trump stirred things up by suggesting that Canada should become the 51st state. He even claimed that Canadians want this and referred to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as Governor Trudeau. So, why did Trump make such a bold statement? Is there any truth to it, or was he just joking around? First off, there's no separatist movement in Canada pushing for this idea. Prime Minister Trudeau wasted no time responding, saying there's not a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would join the US. He made it clear that while Canada values its relationship with the US, sovereignty is non-negotiable. Trudeau's firm stance reflects how deeply Canadians protect their national identity. And it wasn't just him. Ontario Premier Doug Ford called the idea absurd, saying, "Canada is not for sale." Across the board, Canadian leaders are rejecting the notion of losing sovereignty. Trump's comments may be a tactic to apply economic pressure, but they've sparked a bigger conversation about Canadian identity. The answer is clear. No, Canada won't become the 51st state. Political leaders, from the Liberals to the Conservatives and the NDP, agree. As Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre put it, Canada will never be the 51st state, period. In a recent poll, 82% of Canadians oppose the idea. Analysts are calling Trump's statement unrealistic and off the mark. This isn't the first time Trump suggested Canada join the US. It's part of his America First agenda, where he challenges other countries to do more for US interests. But what does this mean for Canada's sovereignty? But Trump's rhetoric isn't just symbolic. It's rooted in his economic policies. He claims that the US is subsidizing Canada through trade, which leads to what he describes as a $200 billion trade deficit. But here's where things get tricky. Trump argues that the $200 billion trade deficit with Canada is a burden for the US. But this claim doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Well, when you combine the both goods and services figures, the total trade deficit for the US with Canada in 2023 was only $40 billion, not the $200 billion Trump suggests. And yet, despite the reality of balanced trade in many sectors, Trump remains fixated on using economic pressure to reshape the relationship, claiming that if Canada were to join the US, the trade deficit and tariffs would no longer be a problem. Trump has also argued that the US doesn't need Canadian crude oil, but this is far from true. Canada supplies 60% of the crude oil imported by the US. Refineries in the US are specifically designed to process heavy crude oil, and Canada's oil is the cheapest and most reliable source for these refineries. If Canada's oil were cut off, US refineries would be forced to pay higher prices to import from other sources, which could harm the US economy and job market. So, while Trump claims that the US is at a disadvantage in its trade relationship with Canada, the facts don't support his narrative. When we talk about America's trade deficit, it's not just with Canada. The US runs trade deficits with many countries, including China, Mexico, and Germany. The issue isn't that the US is subsidizing these countries. The real reason lies in global trade dynamics. The US dollar, as the world's reserve currency, is stronger than most other currencies, making American exports more expensive. On the flip side, this makes imports cheaper for US consumers. Trump has made it clear that he could use economic pressure to push Canada into aligning more closely with US interests. His recent threat of imposing a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, possibly starting February 1st, 2025, should be taken seriously. While this remains a looming threat, it echoes his past actions, like the tariffs he imposed in 2018 on several countries, including Canada. If these tariffs do go into effect, the results could be significant. Higher costs for Canadian consumers, potential job losses in multiple industries, and disruptions to trade. Smaller industries may struggle the most, but larger sectors like automotive manufacturing, agriculture, and natural resources, which rely heavily on US exports, could also face substantial setbacks. We know Trump is all about America first and made in America. So the big question is, will he actually follow through and impose tariffs on imports from Canada, China, Mexico, and other countries? But Trump's tariff talk isn't just about trade imbalances. He's sending a clear message to Canadians. If Canada becomes the 51st state, the issue of imposing tariffs on Canadian goods will be over. Now, Trump has also raised concerns about Canada's defense spending. He claims Canada spends less than 1% of its GDP on defense, well below NATO's 2% target. The truth? Canada actually spends about 1.37% of its GDP on defense in 2024, so not quite 2%, but more than Trump suggests. Trump also argues that if Canada were part of the US, it would be safer from threats like Chinese and Russian naval forces. But Canada doesn't really have conflicts with either country, and there's no evidence of a major naval presence near Canadian borders. Trump's push for higher defense spending from NATO members, including Canada, is really about easing the financial burden on the US economy. He's looking to make other nations carry more of their own defense costs. Recently, President Trump has also made bold claims about how Canada's life would improve if it became the 51st state. According to him, Canadians would enjoy much better health coverage and a tremendous tax cut. Trump's argument revolves around the idea that US healthcare is more efficient and that Canadians would benefit from the private insurance model. He also claims that Canadians are highly taxed compared to American, and if Canada were part of the US, it would get a very big tax cut. However, Canada's publicly funded Medicare system provides universal coverage for all residents, unlike the US system, which is mostly privatized. While Canadian healthcare has its challenges, such as long wait times and limited access for some, the vast majority of Canadians value their universal health coverage, and prefer it over the costly private insurance in the US. In 2023, the average US consumer spent about $5,300 on health insurance and medical services, a stark contrast to Canada's no out-of-pocket expenses for most services. Moreover, Trump's tax cut proposal would benefit high-income earners, but many Canadians are skeptical about whether the trade-off is worth it, especially if it means sacrificing public services like healthcare and education. Trump's ambitions stretch far beyond just Canada. His America First ideology has consistently driven his desire to reassert US control over global assets, especially those that hold strategic and economic significance. We've already seen how his proposals for Canada reflect this drive, but his territorial interests span to other key regions too, including the Panama Canal and Greenland. Take the Panama Canal, for example. Trump has made public his interest in the canal's strategic importance, suggesting at one point that US control over this vital shipping route could significantly bolster America's economic and military strength. The Panama Canal serves as a critical artery for international trade, with around 12,000 ships passing through annually, and its control could offer the US unparalleled leverage in global commerce and military positioning. Trump's remarks about regaining control over the Panama Canal reflect his belief that global infrastructure should be aligned with American interests, and that the US should be at the helm of key international trade routes. For Trump, it's not just about economic power, it's also about military dominance. As US military capabilities in the Caribbean and Central America continue to be important for defense and intervention strategies, controlling the Panama Canal could provide a strategic foothold to project military force across the Americas and the world. Let's take a quick look at the history of the Panama Canal. Between 1904 and 1914, the US played a major role in building this iconic waterway. Once the canal opened in 1914, the US controlled not just the canal itself, but also the land around it, about 5 to 8 kilometers on each side, essentially making it like an American colony in Panama. Fast forward to 1989, and President Jimmy Carter helped broker a deal that gave Panama shared control of the canal with the US. Then, in 1999, the full control was handed over to Panama, and it's now managed by the Panama Canal Authority. But the big question is, could the US ever try to take control back? Let's dig into that. The chances are slim, but not zero. The US has a long history of military interventions and regime changes across Latin America and the world. So when Trump makes bold statements like this, it's worth paying attention to. Given Trump's unpredictability, it's possible that he could try to use force to regain control of the canal. It's not entirely out of the question. What do you think? Could Trump really take it that far? But it's not just Panama that's on Trump's radar. The Arctic, with its vast untapped resources and geopolitical significance, has become another focal point for US ambitions. This brings us to Greenland, an area of particular interest to Trump. Greenland is the largest island in the world, and its area is more than 2.166 million square kilometers. At present, it is an independent region of Denmark. Greenland is inhabited by about 55 to 60,000 people. More than 80% of it land is covered with ice. Trump's interest in Greenland goes beyond just acquiring land. It's about ensuring that the US controls access to critical resources, like rare earth minerals, oil, and gas. As the Arctic melts, new shipping routes and resource extraction sites are becoming more accessible. For Trump, This is an opportunity to secure vital supplies for the US economy while limiting the influence of other global players, especially China and Russia, who are vying for dominance in the region. According to an estimate, there are billions of dollars of lithium and graphite reserve are available, which is an important part of the electric batteries. China is currently at the forefront in production of electric vehicle batteries, which also producing 65% of the global production. Therefore, US, in addition to objective of becoming a global leader in electric vehicle industry, it also aims to control the other reserves of the island to achieve its defense and strategic objectives and goals. Greenland's location is also strategically important in terms of military positioning. It sits near the polar region, which has seen increasing military importance as global tensions rise over Arctic sovereignty. The US military has long operated in Greenland through the Thule Air Base, which is considered a critical asset for early warning missile defense systems and air defense in the North Atlantic. Greenland's strategic value to the US cannot be overstated. It is key to ensuring American military superiority in the face of increasing Chinese and Russian activity in the Arctic. Trump's push for a unified North America under US leadership isn't just about economics. It's about consolidating political power. The more control the US has over its neighbors, the stronger it becomes in a world that's growing increasingly competitive and unstable. Whether through trade policies, territorial moves, or military influence, Trump's goal is clear: a continent where American dominance is unquestioned. For Canada, this vision poses serious challenges to its sovereignty. The 25% tariffs and the idea of becoming the 51st state are just the beginning. What's clear is that in Trump's North America, Canada's role is increasingly subordinated to the US's broader geopolitical strategy, whether Canada agrees or not. Canada now stands at a crossroads, facing pressure like never before. Trump's ambitions, from Greenland to the Panama Canal, go beyond economics. They're part of a larger vision for an America-centered world. As Trump pushes for more control over Canada's economy and political future, Canada must decide: will it stand firm in its sovereignty, or will it be forced to accommodate a reshaped North America under US leadership? The road ahead won't be easy, but one thing is certain: Canada's future is at a critical juncture, and its sovereignty is at stake. The world is watching as this geopolitical drama unfolds. Thanks for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so share your opinion in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more interesting and investigative videos. Like the video and share it with others. Thanks again.